Excellent. Hi, everybody. I like how you snuck everybody in there, Erica. That's great. So the one thing we want to do, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our call, our LMGI FLICS and various important film commissions and others call. I would love to have, I think it was Kristi, I'd love to have Kristi, you rename yourself by hovering in the upper right-hand corner and just adding your city area to your name under the three dots on the upper right-hand corner. It will say rename. What we're going to do, I think Mike is going to take the lead position on this call, and Mike, why don't you jump in and tell them the general game plan?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to have such a great response on such short notice, only a couple days notice. Very interesting times we're living in now. What we'll do is we will start with a couple of questions for our panelists, and then we'll open it up to questions from the attendees. We don't have any time limits. These things are sort of freewheeling. Probably go an hour to an hour and a half or so, or until people get exhausted and start to drop off. It's funny, you can see people drop left and right. You know, it's time to call it a day. So what I'd like to do is, first of all, put it so I can see everyone. I'm going to call on Eve from the California Film Commission to give us all the new information from on high. And then we'll go to Paul Audley from Film LA to speak on the Film LA's perspective. And then we'll launch into some questions for our panelists. So Eve, great to see you. Welcome. And interested to hear what's coming from the State House.
Nice to see you too. And thank you everybody for joining. I wish I had more information to share, but unfortunately I don't have too much. Everybody heard that the governor was going to come out with guidelines yesterday. I personally think he forgot that it was a holiday weekend. And they were working on guidelines, but they have since decided to wait until labor management, the task force that's been working for weeks and weeks and weeks on industry-wide guidelines, is ready, and they want to then review the industry-wide guidelines and incorporate those into their own guidelines. So everybody's been waiting. As most of you know, a lot is that certain counties have been opened up to do more than other counties. And it's basically up to each county's Department of Public Health if, you know, what they're going to allow, how they're going to allow it. And some counties' health departments are waiting for input from the state. So it's kind of a domino effect, and I think everybody's waiting for the industry guidelines to come out. They are supposed to be turned in and ready on June 1st, and then they go to the state health department for them to look at it. So it'll take a couple of weeks and final input. I don't know when. I have no idea when it's going to be finalized, but the initial white paper is due out on June 1st. And a lot just depends on individual counties and their health departments. We get calls just like Paul does every day. When can we start filming? When can we start filming? And I wish I had a magic answer for you. But again, a lot's going to depend on the county that, you know, where you want to film. So.
Who's on that panel, Eve? The task force.
Well, it's the AMPTP is involved, contract services, the studios and the unions. So it's input from the entire, core. And they are conferring with health departments and doctors and insurance companies, and they've been doing a lot of research and bringing people in to talk more about this stuff. So it's a pretty big task force. Paul might know a little bit more about it than I do, but they've been meeting for weeks and weeks and weeks, like all day long.
This is that industry. This is the AMPT white paper that's leaked out. That's been around for a week or 10 days, and that's been.
It's changing. It's
right.
Not what.
That was a draft.
Yeah, it was a draft, and they've already made some changes. So when they saw that there were some things in the state guidelines that they had already changed in theirs, it's just, it's just going to be, everybody's waiting for the industry-wide ones. And it's going to be, I have a feeling contract services will put them out like they do other safety bulletins, where you attach them to the call sheets and, make sure everybody has it. And my guess is that the cast and crew will have to read it and sign an acknowledgement form. That's my guess. It's like they do with everything else. So
I know one of the big sticking points, speaking with folks on both sides, industry, as well as some union guild people, are waivers. There's been talk of, crew members signing waivers. I know that our union in the past has been very, very much against us signing any kind of waiver. So that's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Right. And there are a lot of discussions going on with the insurance carriers now too, to figure out what they're going to cover, what they're going to exclude, what you're going to have to pay more for. It's a big part of the puzzle right now.
I was speaking just before the call with a, let's just say one of the above the line on the newest Jurassic Park movie. And they said that their insurance company told them that they would be covered because they'd already they'd gotten to a certain stage of pre-production. Mm-hmm. So that any show that has gotten to a certain point is going to be sort of grandfathered in. Mm-hmm. Anybody who's just starting to crank up now will have to live by whatever the new insurance standards are. So that's going to be interesting to see how that all works out. Paul, LA County still has quite a rate of COVID, new cases, deaths, the whole thing. Even though things are getting better, it's still one of the hot spots, as our president reminded us a week or so ago. It seems like that's going to translate to LA City, LA County, probably cranking up a little bit more slowly than other places that are less populated. What do you think?
The numbers have been actually, pretty stable in LA County. And I think based on the fact that all of these things, this industry-wide safety group's white paper being delayed now for a couple of weeks, hoping it comes in June 1, that the county's catching up pretty much. They've also been preparing, looking at other guidelines from other groups and from other states, so that if that white paper isn't progressing, they're able to move ahead and begin to develop them if and when the state gives approval for filming to resume. So it seems like we've sort of caught up by the delay in some of this information coming forward. And you may know the county is opening things up now as permitted under the state guidelines. The things that we're watching really carefully as we get closer to July 1, many of our cities are looking at their lost revenue during this period and talking about either partial furloughs of staff for hours or reducing the kinds of activities they do. And so we're constantly checking with this many jurisdictions that we serve as their film office to make sure that we have the staff present there so that when we can go, that there are people there to work with us to make it happen. And so far, everybody that we work with on film permitting in those various jurisdictions is still in place, although we know things may change July 1 for a lot of governments going around.
Well, most of us are covered by union protections. Will Film LA have any kind of protections in place for non-union productions that don't have the luxury of those kind of protections?
Well, Film LA certainly won't, because we're not that kind of an entity that could provide it. But the County Department of Public Health is looking at not only what they're going to put out for safety requirements, but they're also looking at things about enforcement and education to go along with that. So while I don't have any more details, Mike, at this point, what we know is that they're aware and they're working with independent production folks as well as the majors and others who are out there doing the work, and commercial producers as well.
Do you think I'm gonna jump in for a second? One of the questions that's being asked in the Q&A is, do you like, is Film LA and the state of California taking the guidelines that have been established, for example, in Georgia and elsewhere, and building on those, or taking those into consideration? Or do you think that your guidelines are going to be a little more strict, or one way or another?
So Film LA won't actually put out guidelines. We will get the guidelines from the County Department of Public Health, use them in the permit process, and probably they'll be attached as an attachment to the permits. They are waiting, like the state is, for a hopeful delivery of this industry-wide safety report. But they are looking. We continuously forward to county health and to the county film office and to the city's film office. Everybody that's doing them, we're forwarding them so that they have sort of a cache and a library of opportunities to look at for what best practices might exist out there. And they're also recognizing the difference that, unlike a lot of places around the world, if you're not a major production center, there are going to be people traveling. So they're seeing some real differences in those places where people will have to travel to in order to film, versus a place like Los Angeles and other production centers where the people will already be here, and looking at maybe a little bit less restrictive guidelines in the case of a place like LA.
I'm going to bounce back over to Eve. Question from one of the folks online in New York. There's discussion about passing a bill where the government will supplement insurance, production insurance for a pandemic. Has there been any discussion of anything like that in California that you're aware of?
No.
No.
There is a bill, Mike, that got done today in the federal government level that talks about that. It's a difference between the insurance industry's proposal and one from a representative from New York that has proposed that in the federal level as well.
And this is strictly relating to the film industry, not industry across the board.
They actually added the film industry to the proposal for coverage for COVID.
Gotcha. I'm going to just skip around here and go to some of our panelists and just see if they have any information they'd like to share with everybody, or any questions. Let me start with Susannah from the city of San Francisco. I'm going to put you in the spotlight for a second. I know that you had a Marvel production that's pushing for a little bit. I know you've had a couple of other projects that have gone on hold. What's going on in the city as far as discussion about permitting and opening up?
Well, so right now we are currently open for applications, but it has to be for productions whose cast and crew are 10 or less. So that's very small at this point. You know, a lot of still photo shoots and student films and things like that. Actually, we have not issued a permit yet, but we opened for permitting last week. And productions need to follow certain guidelines that the city has put out, our city's health department has put out, including, you know, doing personnel checks every day. And there's a form that you have to give to your crew and cast members to make sure that they don't have any COVID symptoms. And if they did, or if they had any temperature or anything like that, obviously they couldn't work that day. But also maintaining social distance, wearing masks, and sanitation guidelines. So these are all on our website at filmsf.org, and you can all look at the guidelines there if you'd like. Since we put that initial information out, I have gotten just so many phone calls and emails saying, hey, could we work in pods of 10 so that we could actually have, you know, maybe like a crew of 50, but there's never more than 10 in one area. And I've posed that question to our city attorney and our Department of Health, and I'm waiting to hear back from them. I don't know what they're going to say. I think they also were hoping that the governor's guidelines would have come out yesterday, which would they would take into consideration. So for any of you who are interested, I don't have an answer for that yet, but when I do, we will be posting something to our website, and I'll probably do another email blast again.
I know that the whole pod discussion, it's occurring on a lot of different levels.
Mm-hmm.
Person I was speaking with a little bit earlier today from Jurisich was saying that they've been having calls every couple of days with the above the line and production staff, and that's one of the things that they talked about is let's take our schedule, break every department into a pod of a certain number of people. So then let's look at, okay, construction goes in and does their thing, and then the painters come in, and then and what does that mean? And what they came up with on that show was about a 40% increase in the number of prep days. They hadn't gotten to figuring out the filming days yet, but I suspect it's not going to be much less.
Well, another thing is I do think filming exteriors on location. I know I keep reading things about, oh, you know, we can control things better if you're interior, but I don't know, personally, I would rather be filming outside than filming on an enclosed set. And I think as long as people are maintaining social distance and sanitation guidelines, I would personally feel like it was safer to do. I have had calls from commercial productions that want to shoot in the city, and it's really interesting all of the ideas they're coming up with to make things happen, like casting remotely. I've been talking to a beer commercial, and they're casting remotely. They're having the talent pull wardrobe from their own closet for right now, and then showing it to the director. If he doesn't like it, then, you know, they're going to send them something to wear. They're doing makeup tutorials for the cast so they can do their own makeup. I mean, it's not great for all the positions in the industry that need to come back to work, but at the same time, I feel like everyone's trying to be so creative in how to move forward and get people back to work.
That is for sure. Everybody is definitely trying to be creative.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking away and I'm muted.
Yeah.
Tasha, what's going on in the lovely city of Long Beach?
Well, I have been assigned to the Emergency Operations Center, so I'm in the heart of it here. For us, we're LA County, but we have our own health jurisdiction. So Long Beach is one of those unique cities that actually has their own health department here. So we have been working directly with them and our city attorneys on our certification that needs to go to the state. But like everyone else, we really don't have a true answer. We wish that the governor would have come out yesterday with some guidelines. And that's kind of what we were waiting on. We were hoping that our attorneys would have something today, but they don't. So that is kind of where.
Are you allowing any permitting at all, Tasha, like smaller productions or anything like
pattern.
that?
I don't have.
Oops.
No, a lot of them are larger productions, believe it or not. But we don't have any answers. And, you know, I don't want to, I wish I had a time or a date that we were moving forward, but it's the unknown for us right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where we are in Long Beach. But yep, I'm here working, chugging away.
Good.
We know where to find you.
Bettina? Give us some perspective on the Inland Empire, Riverside County.
So unfortunately, like many others on this panel today, we were hoping that the guidelines from the governor would have come out yesterday, and then tweaked a little further this morning to represent specifically this area. What we're hoping, they're having a meeting actually as we speak, so that we could put in place some sort of parameters to open up. I believe that it will be smaller productions, similar to San Francisco, where it's 10 or less, and opening up to, you know, car commercials and small productions on county properties that are open already. Our parks are open, so we're trying to get clearance to at least allow, you know, some sort of scouting to go on there by appointment with our county parks department, and then also smaller productions to come in with the parameters, you know, showing that they're in compliance with state and county measures, safety measures. And then we're hoping at the same time that they could have some sort of guidelines established for larger productions that might be able to hunker down in that region and stay until the productions are over, or temporary housing, you know, if it's vacated for 48 hours prior, would that suffice to allow for private properties as well in the unincorporated areas? So unfortunately, I don't have a firm answer on that today either, but hoping to have that in coming hours, if not coming days.
Thank you. Cassandra, what's going on up north?
So we're, again, very similar in the sense of that until we find out whether we qualify based on the governor standards and then the white pages that come out, we haven't taken anything to our health department yet. I am working with Humboldt County's economic development, and they are saying as soon as we have that information, they'll support us in trying to get filming opening here as long as it's safe, obviously. One of our biggest hurdles would be letting our own community know, you know, that there would be a safety plan in place so that they don't freak out when 100 people from LA come to our rural area. So talking about, you know, requiring something as far as messaging from the production to the community so that the community felt safe, but also then that they would leave the film production alone and the two wouldn't intertwine. Meanwhile, we are working with all our hotels to find out who's going to be film friendly during this time, who would be willing to like maybe rent out a whole hotel, a whole floor, a section to be able to keep the crew away for everyone's safety, both sides, from the regular people that live here. And same thing as we're finding a cleaning company that will come in and could do daily cleanings if they needed to in offices or any other type of things like that. Local professionals that could hire medical professionals. So we're working on all of that while we're waiting for the information to see if we can open it.
And are you doing any smaller crew size, any smaller filmings?
None right now whatsoever. Yeah, they're really not allowing us. They allowed our office to open up, but we're mostly, for the most part, working even from home. And the only reason our office could open up is there's two of us. We don't go there often. And we had to turn in a protection plan even for that as well. Right now, they're really strict about essential businesses only. And the way that we can, economic development here believes that we can become part of that as essential by showing that we can boost the economy, but do it safely. He does believe that we'll be able to get at some type of level, whether it's smaller or just all the way bigger productions. Because we had two movies. We had one about to start, and then another one that was coming, Warner Brothers, big one, that was coming like a month later when all this happened. So it was a big hit, probably $28 million that we lost in 1 month.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it was a big hit for us. So economic development is very eager to get us going again in a safe manner, obviously.
It's going to be interesting to see, I call it the Tyler Perry model of, you know, getting your crew to a location, sequestering everyone, transporting everyone. Basically, you're a prisoner, a well-paid, well-fed prisoner, but you're a prisoner for a certain amount of time. His movies, you know, take 2 to 3 weeks to shoot. It's going to be interesting to see if that model can be implemented on location, you know, for longer shoots with bigger crews. It's an interesting concept. I mean, we all go on location for a long time, but we have free time. We don't just go to the hotel, and we're not just sequestered there. So it's going to be interesting to see if that model takes off, where it takes off, how well it's received by the crew. I suspect after a while, people are going to go bonkers because all they're seeing are the same 75 or 100 people all day long. Let me jump over to Scott Lipke with the city of Beverly Hills and see what's going on with you.
Hello. Right now, we are basically following the city of LA and the county of LA's lead. However, in the meantime, I just actually, before this meeting, I just left a meeting. We were discussing the framework for reopening various businesses. We're preparing a framework similar to that of Culver City's, and we discussed filming. We're looking at possibly, once we get the green light to actually reopen filming, the first wave will probably allow crews of 10 or less, commercial areas only, closed set situation. Basically, that you can pretty much expect from Beverly Hills the same guidelines as the city or county of LA, possibly just slightly stricter.
How do you think neighborhoods are going to be reacting, Scott?
Well, that's one of those things that I keep raising at every meeting that I have with our management, because I don't know how well people know the Beverly Hills residents, but Beverly Hills residents are very vocal about filming in their neighborhoods. In fact, we had a shoot, the last shoot that we had scheduled was on March 13th, the week before we actually started working remotely. And it was a big shoot, and it had to close suddenly because one of the neighbors in the area, who happens to be in the film industry, was concerned about us allowing filming near a residential area when all this was going on. It wasn't yet, we weren't on lockdown yet, but they were very concerned because they had shut down their own production. So yes, we are very concerned about the residents. That's why we're only going to allow commercial area filming in the beginning. When we open up to the residential areas, we do fear that residents may use this as another reason to try and stop filming in their neighborhoods. But again, it's, it remains to be seen. We'll have, we will be putting special conditions specific to this situation in our permits, and we will be adding notification language regarding such, hoping that might alleviate some of the concerns from residents. But again, like I said, that remains to be seen.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Dan Taylor, Inland Empire. How are you, brother?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right.
Good.
I can tell you that there are a few cities that are open for filming. Upland, Ontario, Big Bear Lake, and Temecula have all said that they'll start accepting permits, and on a case-by-case basis, obviously, they want to see what the production's guidelines are for protecting the cast and crew for their COVID guidelines. County of San Bernardino is the same way. They've also said they'll start accepting permits. I know they have one right now they're reviewing. And the BLM Barstow had said permits that are dated June 8th or later, they'll start accepting and considering for approval. Unfortunately, the Forest Service is still closed, Big Bear, but we're working on that and see, they're trying to make sure they get information from the Department of Interior for what they're doing. But I would assume that they are going to be opening soon and following suit with the Bureau of Land Management.
Is the BLM, are they asking folks to simply comply with state or county regs, or do they, or guidance, or do they have guidance or constraints of their own?
I'm still waiting on that to see. They haven't sent me any guidance yet. They're still waiting to see what kind of their guidelines are, but they are expecting to have them soon enough to where any permits dated on the 8th, they'll be able to make those work out. So I just got that today, probably about an hour and a half ago. So That's what I've heard so far. All the other entities, the county of San Bernardino and the other cities, they want to see what those guidelines are that Productions wants to do, and then they're going to take them on a case-by-case basis and say, all right, this looks like they're going to be doing their due diligence, and we will or will not approve from that point.
So I can tell the producer who I spoke with about 10 days ago that Dumont Dunes will be open and available.
You could tell them that it should be open and available after June 8th, yes.
Right.
That's what as of right now. Now, you know, this is all fluid, so
Sure.
we don't know what's going to happen, but that's what they're saying.
Well, that's one thing that we've learned, I guess, in the last 3 months. Things are gospel today, and then a week later, they're not. And then a month later, they are again. You know, this whole thing we're exploring. You know, we've never done this before medically, our economies, our businesses. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things roll out. And I'm sure it's not going to be smooth. We all hope it is. But there will be, you know, fits and starts, and there'll be setbacks. But I think everybody will be learning from everyone, and you know, hopefully increasing the quality of the protocols as we go along. Dan, one question before I leave you: does Ontario include the Ontario Airport?
We
or is it
spoke with.
Lawa?
No, that's Ontario. Actually, it's their own entity now. So
That's right.
they separated from LAWA. The city of Ontario itself is accepting permits, and they are working with the airport. I have not had a chance to hear from the airport yet, the airport authority, whether they will allow filming or not. So that's up in the air. So I don't have an answer for you in that one.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And I think the last film commissioner that we have to hear from is Kristi Johnson from Fresno. How are you, Kristi? It's been a long time. You're muted, Kristi. There you go. Kristi?
Mike, why don't you?
I'll jump to, okay. Sorry, no microphone. Let me jump. I'm sorry, Sabrina. I did not mean to ignore you or neglect you. Give us an update from Shasta County, please.
No worries at all. Lots of faces to go through. Yeah, so we do actually have quite a bit. In our county, we have 13 different permitting agencies, and more than half of them at this point are accepting permit requests and approving, you know, basically, again, it's case-by-case basis. And some of them, so we've got within that city of Redding, our county, U.S. Forest Service, BLM, Whiskeytown National Park Service, and more of those kind of locations. The only one that has not said they specifically have a limit is BLM, but they will be asking as far as number of people. That is not currently a factor for them for whatever reason. So everyone else is kind of adhering to whatever the current stay-at-home guidelines are. But they are actively considering it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One question that came in, I'm going to direct this to Eve and or Paul. Will each production safety plan, sort of, you know, how do we navigate this? Will each production have to submit a safety plan and have it approved by the health department before the permit is issued? You want to jump on that, Eve, and then we'll go to Paul?
I don't know yet. Nobody has told us that we would be approving safety plans. So I have, sorry, I have no.
Okay. I hate to put you on the spot, Eve.
Right. It's okay. I just don't know. I mean, it hasn't come up and nobody has asked us that. I did get a call from somebody a producer who's been in touch with SAG-AFTRA trying to get a little shoot going. And she said that SAG-AFTRA told her that the CFC would have to approve their safety plan. But I had not heard any of this before. And when I tried contacting SAG-AFTRA, I got no response. So nothing. I'm trying to connect with somebody there who can help me with what their requirements are going to be. But I haven't, nobody has talked to the CFC about approving safety plans.
Okay. Paul, what do you think? Anything to add? Or
We're not,
like you said?
it does not appear that we will be doing any form of review, nor will the county or city be doing review of those safety plans. What the current direction is that when the county comes out with guidelines, those guidelines will be attached to the permit as a requirement. And it may say that it conforms to this industry-wide safety plan or something else, but I don't believe there's any intention to do that. We know it would slow everything down a lot. And the real other question is who's expert enough to even review those. There's not enough staff people in a place that puts this many through at a time. So now at this point, no, there's not. It's going to be a requirement that you conform as part of the permit.
Seems to me that no production is going to want to open up, launch into a production, and not have somebody on their staff who's ensuring compliance. I know that some folks at a couple of some safety folks at two studios that I spoke with a couple of last week were saying that they think the onus will be on us as productions to make sure that we're complying, and that there could very well be spot checks like we have fire spot checks or things like that. But unless things are egregious, that we're going to have to police ourselves and self-monitor and self-report if there's a case, and then whatever the repercussions are, shutting down or isolating, follow from there. JJ, Levine.
Yeah, so I'm mining some of the questions from the chat bar and the side, and so one of the questions is, can filming take place on private property now or in the near future under certain stipulations, size of crew, sanitation standards, etc.? And and I'd love to hear everybody weigh in on this from their various areas. But Paul, actually, like in Santa Monica right now, you don't have to have a permit if you're filming on private property and parked on private property and whatever. So I would assume that if you, unless there's something else in the works, if you
don't make any assumptions, JJ.
I know.
They've banned that activity in the same way that they banned retail and other activities.
Oh, so they did. Okay.
So right now there is no filming permitted at all. And to answer the other part of the question, until the county public health department comes up with its regs, there's absolutely no filming of any kind or any size permitted in LA County.
Got it.
Except maybe Long Beach or Pasadena, which have their own health departments. Just
right. And when the county reopens, do you think it'll be just a full big countywide we're open, or do you think it will be parceled out bit by bit, LA County?
I'm not sure if you're talking about size or area, but the guidelines will be are proposed to be countywide. There is a request, I think, coming out from a couple of the supervisors to the state to allow them to give waivers from waiting for the county to cities that may not be as heavily affected. That's a judgment call for those cities when you move people around now that may or may not be infected. But I do think that scale-wise, we'll see some smaller number. But Mike, to your point about the pods, the discussion so far has been about the idea of saying, and this is a made-up number, I'm using the same made-up number all the time. No one has said this, so don't quote it. Let's say that number is 30. You could have 30 at base camp, 30 at your location, and 30 back at the studio, totaling 90 and be okay, just not more than any one number at a location. And again, that's my made up number for illustrative purposes only. So don't expect it.
And what do you think, since, a lot of our questions are coming from, obviously from LA, since there's so many members here in LA, but what do you think is going to happen with schools, Paul, since they're going to, are those going to open up to us since nobody's going back to school for quite a while, or universities?
The universities we don't manage. We do several school districts though, and the school districts are interested in finding a way to make it work. They also have been sort of chomping at the bit and waiting for these county health guidelines. As many of you know, they get revenue off of this process into those individual schools. And I mean, all of you have been through this. It's like the best time in the world to go to a school or an arena or the streets of LA because nobody's there. And yet we can't give you the okay to go. So they want to, they're ready to, but they have to wait for those guidelines as well in order to get permission to come back in.
Yeah. So from what we're talking about, Dan, it sounds like Dan's, few of Dan's cities are open, and then nobody else really is open to any filming at this point.
Did you say San Francisco? Because we are.
And San Francisco, sorry, I did not.
Okay, I also just want to clarify about private property. We don't permit private property. However, I do know that the limit still is 10 or less because it's the same guidelines as operating as if you were a retail business doing curbside retail. Currently in San Francisco, those numbers are limited to 10 or less of workers in your shop. And that would be the same for what the requirements would be on a city level, not from my film office, but on a city level for filming inside a private property.
Got it. That makes sense.
Eve, I'm gonna put you on the spot again, Eve.
Okay.
One of the concerns that I've seen in the newspaper and friends have talked about, I think somebody mentioned it on one of our Coffee Tuesday chats, is do we think that our film incentives are going to be revised given the huge budget shortfall we have in the state? And how is that going to put us, what kind of position will that put us in relation to New York City and probably more importantly, Atlanta at this point?
Well, first of all, we're hearing that a lot of people don't want to travel right now, or when things start opening up, they really don't want to get on an airplane. And we think that a lot of shows will stay here just because of that. The tax credit, the new version 3.0 starts July 1st, and there is a new provision about how much any company can take at one time, the tax credit, and they may have to carry forward some of it. We're just getting clarification from the Department of Finance. So I'm sure once everything is settled and we know what's going to happen and can explain it properly, we'll be putting out a production alert. There is going to be, one minor change, but everything else is all set already. So the basics aren't going to change. So Nancy Raystone, the director of our tax credit program, put out, I think it was Friday morning, a production alert about the new program and when the application dates are, and kind of just, and everything is on our website as well. All the information and comparison between 2.0 and 3.0, it's all on the website. But we are waiting for the Department of Finance to get back to us on the carry forward portion of it.
Gotcha. Thank you. I'm just going to throw this out to everybody. I keep going to Paul and Eve because I know you guys the best and work with you the most. So I'll throw this out to everybody, and if anybody wants to answer it, just put your hand up. Do any of you folks in permitting agencies anticipate any kind of additional permit fees, add-on costs, things like that, that we as location managers can prepare for as we go forward? Anything that you see COVID-19 adding to our budgets?
Not from the permitting side.
No.
Not from the permitting side. It may add other budgets directly to the budget, but not from permitting.
Right. Same here with the state.
Right. The only thing that I can think of is if at some point we have to go to monitoring of any sort. There might be personnel time for that. But it's good to hear that nobody's anticipating any additional fees. And frankly, I think the permit fees in LA and California are pretty darn reasonable overall in comparison to some other places I've filmed. So it's good to hear that they're going to stay low. I don't have any questions on my queue here. JJ, do you have any?
I sure do. So the question is, will there be?
I don't have any. Who's being the moderator? What's going on here?
I know, exactly. Will there be any oversight
Go ahead,
on
Jake.
location to enforce the county health and safety rules by the police department, fire department, or a specifically assigned city-county COVID coordinator for each jurisdiction?
There is no intention to create a county or city position to do this. But as with all permit conditions, if you have fire, police, or other government employees present or one of our monitors and there are violations, they'll be reported, but there's not an intention to create a new position for that.
And Paul, this is a funny LA question that maybe everybody else won't understand, and I think we should ask the same question of everybody else. But in LA, the sort of the order is, as the way I understand it now, is in terms of authority, higher authority, is the fire department, then the film monitor, and then the police. Is that right? Or what's
the permit authority in Los Angeles is the Los Angeles Police Department. They are the ones who issue the permit and have the power of revocation and citation. On the set itself, a fire safety officer is about life safety. They have full power over that, even over police.
Mm-hmm.
And our monitors are there just to do a job of compliance with the permit, but also to help protect the film company if there's a problem with a neighbor or a business. So that's sort of how it works.
Right, but we mostly hire retired police, so I thought that they don't.
Those are not the same thing. So a motion picture officer is not LAPD actually. So I'm talking about the LAPD permit authority. On
Right.
the set, those motion picture officers have power to do crowd control and traffic control, and they're hired by the film company to do that work. They're not permit enforcement agencies.
Right. So then it is that order that I was talking about, more or less.
More or less. All right.
Yeah. Right. Got it. What about anywhere else? Is there any thought about a specific monitoring person on set from any cities or counties?
Speaking for Beverly Hills, we were actually just discussing this. Yeah, it sounds like we were going to lean on code enforcement, but code enforcement doesn't have the resources to do what they're doing and also include filming. So what we're probably going to be doing, at least in the beginning with the smaller shoots that are allowed, will be depending on the production and the location manager themselves to police their own set. And then if the city receives complaints from anybody, say they see somebody gathering in a group and it doesn't look safe, then code enforcement will probably be deployed, and if necessary, PD, to make sure that they're following the terms of their permit.
Okay. Also,
Eve, go ahead.
okay, so some of the proposed guidelines from different sources are asking for productions to have a COVID coordinator. But from what I understand, and we'll know more when the white paper comes out, that they're still defining that position and what kind of qualifications or training that person has to have. So don't be surprised if every show has to have a COVID coordinator if it stays in the guidelines that have been proposed. I just don't know what that position looks like right now. So that was it.
I suspect the studio safety people are
All over
actively involved in these discussions, and much like they oversee abatement of asbestos and lead and things like that, I suspect Every studio will have a COVID king or queen, a COVID czar, if you will, and each production will have somebody who is going to be making sure that minute to minute, day by day, everything is being taken care of at the production level. It's going to be interesting until there's a vaccine, until it's available. I mean, I suspect film crew are not the highest priority to get the vaccine when it comes out. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all rolls out. And, you know, what do you do if 30% of your crew is vaccinated and, you know, the rest aren't? And how do you manage this? Will studios be buying up tens of thousands of doses and hitting everybody on the first day of production? It's going to be very, I keep saying this. I mean, it's
another,
a whole new world. Go ahead, Susannah.
I don't know, another question is, can a studio make their employee have a vaccination? You know, because there's also a question as to whether or not the vaccinations are really going to work and how long will it be before we know if they work. So I find this all really interesting. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, some people, as you know, there's anti-vaxxers and they just won't do it. And speaking with some studio production people and safety people, it's going to be a condition of employment. If you want the job, yeah, but there's also people that can't have vaccinations because of their pre-existing conditions. So how do you deal with that? I mean, I deal with that with my kids and going to school every day. They have issues. They can't do the vaccines. I don't know. I just think it's going to be an interesting set of hurdles potentially. There's so many factors that we haven't been able to explore yet because we're not in the middle of it yet. It's a whole new world, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. I'm going to throw this out, Eve. I hate to do it, but you're the state person, and then maybe Paul and everybody else can weigh in if they'd like. Tasha, did you have your hand up?
I have my hand up for. Oh, Tasha, did you have your hand up?
I did before, but I was just going to say for Long Beach, for us, we're the permit authority. So there isn't, we don't have a code enforcement or anything. It's the film office. It's actually the permit authority, and police, fire, everyone reports to us. So it's kind of a different model than everyone else.
That's nice.
Yeah. So we've had Micah.
Go ahead.
Well, Emma Nilsson from the city of Malibu and Agora Hills there our discussion. She's got something to say. Emma, we can unmute you, and there you are.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to move. I was standing in a different room. Just like Tasha is in Long Beach, we actually are the permit authority as well. So our plan is to, once all the papers come out, make sure that it's going to be like a COVID-19 code of conduct to say, and it's going to basically say that if sets aren't complying with all of the new rules, that they have the possibility of being shut down if they aren't going to comply or figure out how to comply during the duration of their shoots. And we are the permit authority, so we check our shoots every day to make sure they're in line, because Malibu, like Beverly Hills, is a little touchy, so we just have to be really strict with our sets.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Eve, Paul, how is this going to work? We're going to have state guidelines. Cities can add restrictions or constraints, right? They can make them the guidelines tougher. They can't make them weaker. Is that a safe assumption?
That's how it works in the standard.
Everybody, I see like 7 film commissioners going like this.
Yeah, it's a standard thing that
Paul,
it sort of flows downhill. So you can only get stricter than the state, and then only get stricter than the county, and that's how it typically flows, unless there's some exemptions given in this.
And again, it's going to depend a lot on the individual departments of health. So, yeah.
So, Eve, the state puts out on a website that handy document that shows every film commission in the state and who the contacts are. Will that be revised if a city or a county or a jurisdiction has more strict guidelines than what's put out by the state? Do you know?
Wow, we haven't even thought about that, Mike. Thanks. hasn't, we haven't gotten,
Because,
we haven't
yeah.
created a column yet for COVID requirements, but it's a good idea. I mean, we're hoping that everybody basically follows the industry-wide guidelines, because I have a feeling those are going to be the most comprehensive. And it's industry creating guidelines for industry. It isn't just bureaucrats, you know, creating guidelines. So yeah, I think that at some point we will have to do that. I mean, we already have a chart of individual film offices, our regional film partners throughout the state, and when they think they're going to open, when they think they're going to be ready to review applications. And we'll probably just revise this Excel spreadsheet we have to keep track of cities within counties. So good idea. Thank you.
I'm full of good ideas for things other people can do, all kinds of things. Paul, I'm going to come back to you with some ideas that I have for Film LA. I'm sure you'll be interested.
And in the meantime, we do have a COVID-19
I see
resource
Beverly
page,
Lewis.
so feel free.
Oh, great. Thanks. And that's part of, just go to your website and we'll see it, I'm sure, right up front. I see Beverly Lewis has jumped in here. Beverly, before you got on, and Emma, we asked everybody to sort of give a little update on their area. Anything from Placer Lake Tahoe?
So our county chose to not make any more restrictions than the state, whatever those may be, when they come down, and nor have our cities. And part of that, not that it had anything specifically to do with filming, but the easy thing will be when filming is allowed to resume, that the productions would only have to minimally follow at least the governor's guidelines if they're shooting in unincorporated Placer County or in any of our cities. With that in mind, what we're working on right now is crafting a little bit of language to tweak our permit applications so that COVID-19 issues are accommodated with that. And we're hoping maybe within 2 weeks or so, we do to get all of this cleared with our film policy regarding that. We will, all of our businesses in the county that reopen do have to have a safety plan that they just have to post in their businesses. Nobody's going to be reviewing it, as I understand it right now. So if production companies are already going to be required to do that, what I need to find out is, do they have to fill out our form as well as have their own, or can their form be adequate? And I think they would just submit it with our permit. It's just proof that they have a safety plan. But we're working those details out.
Thank you, Beverly. Emma, did you have anything to add to what you said a little bit ago?
I don't think we have anything else to add. That's just what we're thinking thus far about how we're going to deal with COVID. But we aren't taking permits or anything right now. We're just waiting to see what's going to happen with the state and the county. We're really working with Paul and Film LA to make sure we don't, step on anyone's toes, because our cities are LA County. So we're just waiting and hoping that we can get filming back soon and safely.
One of the things that's been discussed, I'm not really directing this to anyone, if anybody wants to comment on my comment, but from what I've heard is once the guidelines come down and industry and the unions and guilds weigh in, crews are going to have all kinds of training. Every department is somewhat unique, and there's going to need to be standardized training, and those training programs are going to have to be developed and produced and offered to the members. Now there's tens and tens of thousands of people in the industry. It's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out through contract services. contract service is a little bit like the federal government. It doesn't move very quickly. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that occurs, because the protocols might come out, everybody agrees by the 15th of June, and then it's like, oh my God, we've got to train a couple 100,000 people. Anybody have any perspective on that? Paul, you just have a wry grin on your face.
No, I'm just laughing because, you know, Todd Lindgren, who was my VP of communications, is now over there, and, you know, maybe you should ask him. We don't actually know. We know there's going to have to be a lot of training. I'm sure a lot of it's going to be online. I'm sure they're going to want to produce those videos. It's going to be a massive new thing for all of us. But I don't have any details about what or when from them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Do you think, does anybody think that there's going to be, I mean, you know, granted now everybody's going to start back. We're going to start back at the same time. There's going to be a shortage of stage space. For some of the other film commissioners outside of, well, for Los Angeles, Paul, I'm assuming Los Angeles is concerned about the flight of production to other areas, just in terms of availability. And for the other film commissioners, are you all thinking, I mean, I know you're thinking about these camps and these compounds and these places that can potentially be, you know, all one-stop shopping, but what about any ideas about building new stages or making, you know, bringing anything into the picture that's film friendly at this point?
This is Susannah from City of San Francisco. We currently have the stage at Treasure Island available again, Hangar 3, which was used in the 90s and early 2000s, and that's open for filming right now. Well, you know, as soon as these larger productions are approved.
Mm-hmm.
But so if anyone wants to come from LA to San Francisco, we welcome you.
Well, they can come from anywhere to San Francisco, Susannah.
Yeah, okay.
You may know there's a lot on the books, actually, of several studios to be open that happened before COVID-19. But in response to what we were hearing from our studio partners and others, we put out a call to some of the major commercial real estate companies about vacant spaces that might be used. So we're building an inventory of those as possibilities. We've given them to city and county officials to look at how we might be able to temporarily allow those as we do other large spaces. But LA, I think, has always recognized that this industry needs to be in the entire state. We supported the bump in the tax credit for that reason, recognizing that it's important to the whole state, and it's important to LA to have it be in the whole state in order to maintain some of the statewide programs and protections. So we work closely together. We refer people out to different FLICS all the time, and it will be a crush. We're already short stage space, and so wherever we can get people, as long as they're working and they're from California in particular, we want to keep them going.
Yeah, Bettina.
Go ahead, Bettina.
We are discussing with our county. We know that there are surplus land county properties that are available. So we are discussing with them whether we can, you know, pursue those locations and put out an RFP for just such a studio space. So.
Right. And we're also working with our convention center because the city owns the Long Beach Arena. So, and it's vacant too. So the city of Long Beach, we've been working with our partners there on that resource as well, because the entire center is vacant.
Yeah, and I would get in hotels, I would guess too, right? At this point.
Yeah.
You know, we've had somebody from Marriott on a bunch of our Coffee Tuesdays calls, and they're ready to do a lot as far as filming goes. You know, Marriott and Hilton. Because everybody's mostly empty. I mean, with the exception of some of their hotels, they're filling with doctors and nurses that are working in the hospitals. So,
I'm sorry, JJ.
Go ahead, Mike.
One of the questions rolled in a little bit ago. I've heard that Atlanta will be rolling out its regulations quite like LA's film monitors and FSAs. I know that for about a month, I was part of a group of location managers who have been speaking through the LMGI. I've been speaking with the folks at the City of Atlanta Film Office. And City of Atlanta is, I mean, they just have a hell of a lot of production. And they really have not had, there hasn't been the best interaction with neighborhoods. And they've gotten hammered over the last few years with complaints from neighborhoods. And I know that they are going to be instituting film monitors on a lot of their locations. They don't require FSAs or FSOs on most locations. They're going to start that as well. I think there have been a number of safety issues that have popped up. And I think those kinds of additional costs will be pretty onerous for some productions. Atlanta's really, their folks are really expensive. So I think that could help drive some production back. I think Eve mentioned, you know, a lot of folks don't want to travel. And if Georgia has a bump in cases, if they have a spike in the next month or so, in addition to these additional costs, it could drive more production, hopefully to California. I've got a few more questions that popped in here. I don't really know if I understand this, but I'm going to throw it out. Will permits for residential locations be treated differently, I suspect, than industrial or commercial, anything like that? Anybody want to tackle that? If anybody has any information on anything like that, go ahead, Tasha.
So for us, for residentials, really what we're working on, and we've been working on with the health department, is the idea of only allowing essential crew on set. We would not allow base camp or cars in the parking lot anymore or anything like that. It would all have to be off-site, and then only essential crew could go in.
My phone's ringing.
Yes, it is. Mike, we don't currently see any difference. There currently are different ways to film industrial, business, and residential. We don't see any increase in it, but we do have our 4 full-time folks on community relations have been in contact with hundreds of contacts in the neighborhoods and business districts to let them know what to expect, what's happening. They'll update them on the guidelines as they come forward in an attempt to make sure that, I think one of the questions was, should they anticipate more reaction? And we've talked a little bit about that, the potential. So we're working, the LA Loves Film campaign, which was going to have a different aspect to its PR purpose, now is being refocused really on this. How do we restart safely, responsibly, and get community support for it?
Great. Yeah, it's too bad you had to pivot in the middle, but it's good that you can. It's good that you can. I'm going to answer this question. The question was, will California base its filming guidelines on other states like Georgia who have already issued their guidelines? I think based on what we were saying earlier, the state of California is working with industry and guilds and unions here in California, as well as, actually, I know guilds in industry, guilds and unions from out of state as well. But to develop guidelines that are specific to California. And I suspect, I mean, everything that I've seen, from the bootleg AMPTP to the various other things that have come, they all essentially say the same thing. It's about cleanliness and distancing and crew sizes. So I suspect that California's will be stringent. They'll be strong. We've got strong unions who want to protect its workers. And they will probably not vary too much from what Georgia comes out with, or New York comes out with, or London comes out with. I think we're all pretty much on the same page. Anybody have anything else to say on that? Anything different? I didn't think so. We are now at, one more question popped in. Is there any concern from any of the permitting agencies regarding the content being created, things like American Idol or some of these reality shows or some of these contestant shows? let me just say that I know that in the past, some of these productions were a little loosey-goosey with permits. Is there any concern on the state level and city level, any of the cities, that some of these folks might show up and want to work without complying?
I think that they can't, if they're working without complying. We've had a few cases of that in LA, and LAPD has been out either shutting down or citing production that have gone out without permits. I think what they're talking about a lot of times is the people who are doing basically, even Idol and some of the other shows, all the contestants are still at home. And they're doing, you know, their own, like a Zoom meeting for the shows. And technically those require a permit. I'm just not sure that the permit authorities are chasing them down at this point, because it is almost virtually one-on-one conversation with no one else in the room.
Right.
I have a question that popped up for Tasha. If we're supposed to limit shuttles and self-drives, like so many of the guidelines are stating, isn't crew parking going to have to become part of our base camp?
Sorry, had to move offices.
Okay.
I've walked around the whole building.
You've been all over the place.
So for us, a lot of our good neighborhood guidelines, like Paul says, requires the base camp and crew parking to be off-site anyways in most of the neighborhoods. We would allow essential vehicles in. They will limit those drive-in, like director drive-ins now. They would be trucks, essential trucks only. But yes, crew would have to be off-site in the neighborhoods, but typically they are anyways. In our business areas like the convention center and stuff, we're not planning on implementing that in those areas.
So now we have some teeth when we go to the DP, who always drives his car right to set. We can tell him, no, you can't do this. Finally, 30 years in the business and we've got this.
We'll have somebody drop him off.
You're gonna have to get a car for him.
Yeah. I don't have any more questions from the peanut gallery. JJ, do you?
I don't. I think I think, you know what, I think what might be kind of interesting, Mike, since you know, we're already at like a little bit over an hour, is maybe, and by the way, I would love to invite everybody back again once the governor's guidelines are out, to have this conversation another time. I think it would be wonderful. But I'm thinking that since we're, you know, coming to a close, it would be interesting to hear from everybody about, you know, just sort of your final words and what you want to communicate about where you are in this great state of ours. Let's start with Eve. We'll wrap up with you since we started with you. We'll torture you to the very end. Let's start with, I'm going to start, Kristi doesn't have a sound, with Sabrina. Let's start with Sabrina, who, by the way, thank you, Sabrina, for putting this together from the FLICS perspective.
Yes, thank you.
And so just on the question you're just asking as far as about our region, or just how we're responding in the midst of this?
Sort of your, you know, your closing thoughts on how, you know, where you guys think you are, what you have to offer, the way you think it's all gonna, you know, roll out in the next couple days, weeks.
Yeah. Well, I know, you know, our county was one that was relatively, you know, we had very low cases. I think the residents here are very much wanting to reopen at full capacity as soon as possible. And so I think everybody's just excited to welcome people in when they're ready. And you can see that with our permitting agencies, with so many of them already back on receiving applications. So I just say we're here, and, you know, the ones that are ready, we're ready to go, and we're happy to have people when we have something that fits their needs.
Sounds great. Emma.
I mean, we're just about the same. We're just waiting and excited to reopen. We've been getting a lot of emails and calls with inquiries, and we're happy to help you and plan for the future and let you know what our fees are, anything. We're just here to help right now and looking forward to when we can finally have people back in Malibu and Agora Hills.
Yeah. We're looking forward to that too.
Yeah.
What about Sam? What's the word from San Francisco?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're ready to start taking permits now, and again for the smaller productions. And I think our main, push is to be sure that everyone is being as safe as possible. Nobody wants to get sick. Nobody wants to transmit this to anybody. And I think we're all going to have to work together to practice the best practices that come up instead of just, oh yeah, another piece of paper. Let's keep moving on because we're in a hurry. And we really look forward to working with you, and hopefully I will have information, in the next week as to whether or not we can do something with pods, because I do think that will help open up production. And I do think it kind of makes sense that if you have these separate groups that you can maintain these social distancing practices. So we look forward to working with you.
Oh God, of course we all look forward to that. We're all very eager to get back to work. Scott Lipke, City of Beverly Hills.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same as what everybody else is saying, and following up with Susannah, we are actually exploring some incentives. I'm looking at trying to implement a program similar to what San Francisco has with their vendor discount program. So hopefully that could help revitalize the economy in the city while also encouraging film production to come to the city. I'm going to be looking to see if we can get some hotels that might be willing to offer discounts or block out floors, things like that, services, restaurants, etc. So we can try and get things back on track. And just like everyone else is saying, we are very much looking forward to starting up film permitting again.
Yeah, great. Dan Taylor.
I did check while we're doing this whole thing. Mike had asked about the Ontario airport. I did check on that with my wonderful partner, Sherry, and she said it's not open yet, but they're working to try to get that open. They're waiting on a few more things. They actually are waiting on to hear what the governor has to say for the airport. So they're a bit worried about that. But the city itself is open, and any of you know JJ Sitar, who's runs the film office there. He's excited to be open, and is raring to have people come and shoot in the city, as is the other cities in the county of San Bernardino. They all are looking forward to have filming coming back because they see it as an important economic engine to this state.
Well, and we know anybody named JJ has got to be cool, right? So, how about Beverly Lewis? Mike, I think Mike froze. Oh, and you're on mute, Bev.
Sorry, I was looking in the wrong place. I should be used to this by now. I would echo my counterparts. We're all looking forward to seeing production resume in whatever guise that is. I would love to leave a question for the location managers out there. Please keep in mind what kinds of things what kind of information are you going to be looking for from us film commissioners? What kinds of lists of things? I know it's all going to be unfolding and flexible as things get tried out, don't work, do work, but keep us in the loop about what things can make your job easier.
Thank you for asking that. That's a good one. We'll have to stew on that one a little bit. Tasha, what do you have to say? Your final words ever.
So we are eager to get back to work. We are here. Everyone is still working and we're all still coming in. We've just been assigned, my staff is lucky enough to be assigned to emergency operations. So we haven't been together in 2 months. We've been all over the place. We miss our film commissioners. We miss our location managers. We just miss what we're doing in general. So I know all of us want to get back to work as soon as possible. and we are here to help. I mean, if I take off my Long Beach hat and I put on my other hat as FLICS president, I can say that I think the entire state, all of the film commissions that we deal with are ready to get back to work. They're here to help you guys, and we just need to get information from you, like Beverly said, on how you need our help and how you want our help. But other than that, we want you back as soon as possible.
That's great. Thank you. Let's see who else. Let's go Bettina, Cassandra, Paul, Eve, and then I think Mike has a couple other things to throw in there.
So Bettina here from Riverside County. So both Stephanie and I are eager to welcome the industry back to Riverside County. We've got, you know, so much space out here in the county and properties and county parks and airports and things like that. So as soon as we can, we're going to be welcoming everybody back here for filming, of course, with all the safety measures in place. In the meantime, we'll be developing a list of all the 28 cities and what their parameters are for filming in those cities. And we'll have that on our website as soon as possible, so that when we can open up for you, there'll be, you know, a one-stop shop for information. And in the meantime, we're just going to keep trying to open up other spaces in the county that would be available for filmmakers. You know, county properties and other properties. There's some private locations that are being repurposed for movie ranches and things like that. They're going to need a little bit more development on their end in order to be fully functional and providing the service that's needed to the location industry. But, you know, we'll keep doing what we can to help the county infrastructure build to the point where it can accommodate an increase in filming as we're keeping all this in California. So we're working also on workforce development grants that are available to some of our nonprofit agencies that are eager to train high school and graduates of production schools so that they can get some additional training and that will have a, you know, be ready for welcoming the industry and have the infrastructure with some crew and services that are needed. So we're going to keep pushing forward, and as soon as the industry is welcomed out here again, we want some services to be in place.
That's great, Bettina. It sounds like you guys are really on the track. It sounds like, yeah, it's good. I know that feeling. Cassandra.
Yes. So again, yes, we want filming back here. Economic development in Humboldt County wants it so bad that they are actually in the middle of creating a local tax incentive program that we hope to launch or get approved as early as July. So they're super excited by it. They're willing to support us and help us out with taking it to the health department when the new you know, plans come out, and trying to get it approved from them that would allow filming to take place here. So they're supporting us in multiple ways. So I think that once we can open, we will open, you know, strong and be very welcoming.
That's great. Mike, did you want to jump in before we say, before Paul and Eve say their goodbyes?
Yeah, there were just a couple, there were some questions that came in from folks who probably, can you hear me okay? I'm getting yeses and nos. I'm just going to launch into it. Some questions came in from folks who probably joined us a little bit late, and they've already been answered, but I'm just going to answer these questions very quickly, and I'll ask any of the film commissioners to jump in if I get off base here. We don't know when the state guidelines are coming out. We hope they come out, you know, within the next couple of weeks, but there's going to be a lot of discussions between industry and unions and guilds before that happens. None of the film commissioners who we have on the panel here anticipated any additional fire safety or police or COVID inspections. They are all anticipating that the productions will be self-policing and probably only be stepping in if there's anything that occurs that's untoward and out of guidelines. And where did I get that fantastic cow painting? Got that at the Palm Springs Art Show about 10 years ago. I've had about 5 people. Every time I'm on, somebody asks where that painting came from. There's a lot of those out there. Actually, the person that painted them, there's loads of them. Lisa's cow, it's a great one. And that's all I had from Anything to add?
No, there's I think there's some talk about Ventura County being a little bit more open, and I don't know, Eve, maybe you can answer to that a little bit, or I'm guessing it's going to be the same answer that we're.
I was asked to join a FLICS call last week, and Bill Bartels, the film commissioner, he said they are now, they have like 36 different jurisdictions, as you know. There isn't one central permit authority there, but a lot of these jurisdictions now are open to the possibility of filming, but they want a report from the productions on the risk assessment, you know, or to include a risk assessment and how they are going to mitigate those concerns. And there'll be health and safety officers involved. And it hasn't been thoroughly defined yet, but it sounds like they're getting ready to start entertaining applications, but there will have to be some kind of information from the production on how they're going to mitigate the risks.
Right, got it. So, well, Eve, since you're talking, maybe you could say your goodbye words, and we'll go to Paul, and then Mike will wrap it up. Yeah. So,
sure. Anyway, it's really nice to see everybody. I miss the interaction. All of us at the Film Commission are still working. We are mostly working from home and effectively. I mean, our services, we're still doing everything and getting it done. We're just each kind of working from our own homes, and some of us go to the office like once or twice a week. There are certain things that are just easier, and we have no idea when our office will be open again, but when it is, it'll be gradual. There will be just like maybe 1 or 2 people from each department to start off with, and then gradually we'll have other people joining, but I have no idea when that is going to be. I also wanted to give a shout out to my friend and colleague, Eric Klosterman, who all of you know well. And he is a great source of information, and we all work very closely together. So if it's not me, it'll be Eric funneling more information to you as it comes up, because I know that he's on those calls every week. And when we have meetings internally, he always brings questions, you know, LMGI questions to the table and talks about what everybody's concerned about. So we are just know we're aware, and we're looped into it.
yeah, he's been great. He's been, you know, because he gets every side of it, right? Because he's been a location manager, and he's been president of the LMGI, and he, you know, so he gets every perspective. You know, the one, and I think this will apply probably more to Eve, you and Paul as well, is like Russ Vega just brought up the idea of commercials. I mean, commercials, we've been talking a lot about long form, but commercials are not going to be required to sequester together, right? Then like these other films and TVs, I'm assuming. Is that a safe? I know, here I go, Paul, assuming again, right? But safe assumption?
We don't know yet if there's going to be a separate set of state guidelines for commercials. We have no idea. At the moment, I haven't heard of any, although, you know, AICP created their own proposals, and they're just waiting for I think the county health departments to open up more so that they can start again. And as Mike said, their guidelines are very similar to all the other proposed guidelines I've looked at. They're all going to be pretty similar.
Yeah, exactly. I think that'll be interesting because there'll be a little wild, wild west, but we're going to learn a lot, I think, from the commercial people that come out. And Paul, what do you have to say to us before we wrap it all up and put a button on it?
Well, to start with, recognizing that we're all suffering the same kind of frustrations you are about how long this is taking. But there's 108 people at Film LA who are able to work remotely. So even if we can't get back into our building on Sunset, we can start working tomorrow when we get the go-ahead. I think we need to remember that in that yin and yang kind of thing, for every crisis, there's an opportunity. And there's two major opportunities that you can help particularly with. One is we can innovate now. We have to do things differently, so let's look at how we can do things differently and be innovators. And the other is to demonstrate that the film industry is extraordinarily professional, responsible, and a good neighbor. And I think it's going to be more critical than ever that we all demonstrate that together as we come back to work with each other. And in order to be prepared for that, I would encourage you to keep looking at our COVID-19 resource page, which not only has updates from all those jurisdictions, but also has a lot of lists of resources that you as people in the film industry may want to tap into. So we're looking forward to having you back. We're ready, and we're just as anxious as you are to get going again.
Thanks, Paul. I've said a couple times, and I'm sure people on this call have heard me say it, is, it's not insurmountable. It's a big problem, that's for sure. But if we just keep taking little bites at it, we will have it solved. That is what we all do, as that's our nature. So it's going to happen. It just takes a little while to work through all the loose threads. Mike Fantasia, I think, has a couple words to say to wrap it all up, and thank you, everybody. It's been really fun to be able to be with you.
Yeah, just one thing. If you want to solve a problem, give it to a film company, and they'll solve the problem. I worked on Top Gun Maverick last year, and one of the Navy guys that we work with all the time, the guy's got 30 years in, and he's a pilot for Delta now. And the other day we were talking, he said, "Man, one thing, I thought we were good. I thought we could. You guys, you get whacked in the head with a baseball bat, and 45 minutes later, you've got a plan. When the aircraft carrier's drive shaft breaks, you figure out 3 days of filming in the carrier, you just made it up, and boom, you're there." So, sort of echoing what Paul said, we're very innovative, and, try to look at it in a positive way. This is a terrible situation that we're in, but there's going to be a lot of opportunity out there, a lot of opportunity for new businesses, a lot of opportunity for people to reinvent themselves, a lot of opportunity to figure out different ways, better ways of doing things. So it's pretty dark right now, but I think we see glimmers of light out there. And I think if we all work together, share information, we're all going to come out of this better and stronger. So, let's just keep talking. I want to thank all of the panelists. I want to thank all of the 175, 200 people that joined in here today. We're going to be continuing with our coffee talks on Tuesdays. And I want to thank everybody who's been involved, JJ and Sabrina for really wrangling today, JJ for wrangling Coffee Tuesdays with Ron Schetzel. I think this has really given us a great opportunity to get to know each other better. And let's just continue to do so as we move forward. And I can't wait to apply for my next film permit, hopefully in LA somewhere, California somewhere. So with that, I want to thank everybody very much, and see you all soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody, and also a big shout out to all our whole team: Erica, Miguel, Leah, the other Leah, for putting all this together. Because believe me, I wouldn't have figured it out. And John Brackett right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.